Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today as we're going to be talking about the late breaking news from April 14th at 9 p.m. at night when it was revealed that Democrats have a plan and your rights be damned. That's right, they're coming out with their well-executed plan that has been in place for quite some time. And we're going to talk about it and how that's going to be affecting you from the Second Amendment through all of your rights going forward. Now, before we get started, if this is the first time that you've seen the channel, we welcome you here. We do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you on DLive, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow, to be able to speak with you directly about the issues that matter to you and to hear your voice in calls and in chats about what is happening and how it's affecting you, because we believe in free speech. So we invite you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. to join us. But let's focus on the late breaking news and let's get some context, something that is sorely missing from the major news media. There is a plan, and we know that there is a plan because we have been told this over and over again. Let me explain what we mean. So you may recall, it was back on March 25th that President Joe Biden had spoken to the America in his first press conference, the latest press conference that we have ever seen a new president ever do. And it was about 62 days into his presidency, and he was asked a question about gun control, and I want to play that for you.
Said to stay tuned for actions that you might take on gun control. Wondering if you've made a decision either about sending the manufacturer liability bill that you had promised on day one to Capitol Hill, or executive actions like going after ghost guns or giving money to cities and states to battle gun control.
All the above. It's a matter of timing.
It's a matter of timing. I want you to focus on that. He was talking about gun control, something he had talked about during the 2020 election. And he had a couple of other things that happened in the 2020 election that he wanted to talk about. But first, let's focus on this thought. It's a matter of timing. It's not that this is a new idea. It's not that it's now time to do something. It's not a reaction looking forward for America based on what is happening right now, or at that point on March 25th. No, it's about what things they're going to do and in what order. Executive orders, acts by Congress. It's all about when is it the right time to do something. And what time is better than right now? Let's consider that right now, Congress is sitting at, or at least as of March 1st, the last time a Gallup poll had been taken on this, has an approval of 36%, which is dramatically higher than it has been since 2009, and surprisingly higher than what Congress has been receiving under Democratic and Republican presidents. And that's because the American people, well, they've gotten checks. And since December, when the second round of COVID relief checks had gone out, and now with a third COVID relief check having gone out, Americans are pretty happy with Congress because who doesn't enjoy getting a free check, free money? And so Congress is on an approval ratings high, kind of like a sugar high. At the same time, we see that for President Biden himself, according to a YouGov poll, in a recent YouGov poll, there was a survey, and they said that 44% of Americans think that Joe Biden is honest and trustworthy. 40% of Americans disagree, stating that he is not honest and trustworthy. That's a very interesting thing to keep in mind. So we have a president who's running about even with the country in terms of their approval, their interest, their belief in what he is saying and what he is doing. At the same time, we have a sugar high in Congress because people just got free checks, and Congress hasn't done anything at the moment to make people aware of what's really going on. So it's a great time to start putting in new laws. We've already seen some 40 executive orders from Joe Biden, all crammed together at the very beginning of his administration, before people can see the reaction, the consequences of any of his executive orders. So we have to wonder, and we have to ask ourselves, what's going on? Now, one of the things that were very critical in the 2020 election was a question about what's going to be happening with the Supreme Court. And this is an important piece of this puzzle to give you full context on what was said last night. And as we're reviewing it right now, it happens to be April 15th at 2:30 in the morning. So let's look at this. You may recall that it was back in October 8th of 2020 when Joe Biden was being asked repeatedly by members of the news media to answer one simple question. And that question was packing the courts.
They'll know my opinion of court packing when the election is over. Now look, I know it's a great question, and I don't blame you for asking it. But you know, the moment I answer that question, the headline in every one of your papers will be about that.
Can you imagine that the headlines in every newspaper will be an issue, the answer to a question about an issue that will affect generations of Americans forever? A question that may turn our third part of government, our Supreme Court, into nothing more than another political dog and pony show. A question that has serious ramifications for every single American alive today and those to be born for generations to come. Yeah, it's a pretty big question. And yeah, people should know the answer. And yes, it would be the headline because it's important. But instead of giving the American people an answer, we were told, wait, you'll find out if and when I win, and then, and only then, you'll find out what the answer is. Well, we kind of knew what the answer was going to be. We knew that the answer was going to be yes. Democrats are upset because they don't have the lead, the majority in the Supreme Court. And they don't like not having a majority. They don't like not being in control of what's happening. They don't like that their justices are not able to be advocates, to be political on the court. So they want to fix that. They want to pack the courts. They want to add more Supreme Court justices so that they have the majority, so that they can control what is and is not allowed in this nation. It's a pretty straightforward statement. Matter of fact, we made that statement back in October of 2020, and we said that on October 27th. In fact, we were talking about it when the Washington Examiner and YouGov put out a poll stating that 47% of the American voters opposed court packing. You may recall this, because we know that back on October 7th, the YouGov poll, Washington Examiner YouGov poll, said that 47% of voters opposed packing the court. That's really important. That 47% of voters said they don't want to see Democrats just shove in as many justices as they can until they have the majority that they are desperately seeking. That's what we had said at the time, and it's an important statement because I think it's still very true. Democrats just want control. They wanted control of the House. They wanted control of the Senate. And they were willing to say things and do things to get that control, including making promises that have not come true, like the $2,000 checks that were guaranteed to come, according to Joe Biden, in January of 2021 down in Georgia, saying if you elect the 2 Georgia senators as Democrats, that there would be an immediate check coming out for $2,000 to every American. As we know for a fact now, that instead became $1,400, not the $2,000 that was promised. So that's a broken promise. And those were his words directly in Georgia in January 2021. So Democrats are willing to say things to get the votes, to get the power and the control of our government. We've seen that. And they're willing to not answer questions when they think that it may affect whether or not they will be able to maintain that control, as we saw in October of 2020. But that's not the only thing that's happening. Because what are the Democrats doing when they do have that control? Well, we saw a few things happen with that. As an example, March 25th, we were talking about the Ninth Circuit Court decision that has had a massive impact on your ability to protect yourself, to protect your families, for women to protect themselves and their children, for any individual to save their own life or the lives of others from crime. We said at the time, Ninth Circuit Court has just ruled that open carry, concealed carry are not allowed by the Constitution, that the Second Amendment does not apply, that states have power over the citizens when it comes to self-defense. Obviously, this is a big deal. That's right. And we went into that decision, which is Young versus Hawaii, and telling you about the impact it has on you in your everyday life, and that it sets the tone and the pace for the growth of removing your rights, of destroying the Second Amendment, much like H.R. 127 we talked about with coming from Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, much like S. 292 that we've heard about, or H.R. 8 that we've heard about. Each of these whittling away the ability of American citizens to be able to protect themselves according to the Second Amendment. In fact, removing that. And most of these things being done by executive order, but also by judicial advocates, individuals who are promoting politics and not law. Just like in the Ninth Circuit Court case, Young versus Hawaii, where a decision was made that has never been said or considered or stated as a reason ever in the history of this nation, that you do not have a right to defend yourself from the moment you step outside of your home until the moment you step back in it. Nowhere has that ever been argued. Now, never has that ever been brought up as a question about the Second Amendment, and it is now a decision that will affect people's lives throughout the entire nation. But it didn't stop there, because on that same day, March 25th, we know that we had heard that Joe Biden was planning to put out executive orders that would have a massive impact on gun control. That he was going to put out ideas about gun control that would affect everyone. Ideas, by the way, that had nothing to do with protecting the public. In fact, although it was hidden by most news media, sandwiched between pictures and stated as quickly as possible so that you could miss this and not notice this, the reported executive orders under consideration aren't necessarily applicable to the recent shootings. They don't apply to making American citizens more safe. That's right. The ideas about ghost guns, about red flag laws, they don't make Americans safer. And we've talked about that at length, most recently when we were talking at Rutgers University speaking with their students about the red flag laws and the consequences of those laws, which we invite you to take a look at. When we look at this in context, so we're seeing a pattern. Democrats have a plan in place. Joe Biden has told us that. It's about the timing. We know that they are at the peak of their popularity at this moment. The American public is on a sugar high, having gotten free stuff, with the potential of getting more free stuff in the near future. We know that the American public is currently saying divided almost evenly about whether or not they trust Joe Biden, if they believe he's saying things to help or just saying things for political advantage. We're also just now seeing that some of the things that we've been told by Democrats, like vaccines, aren't exactly correct, that there is more danger and that the rush to move forward may not be the best thing that could be happening. At the same time, we're also hearing from justices like Justice Stephen Breyer, who we heard from back on April 6th. And on April 6th, he was telling the American people, and more importantly, the elected officials in the Democratic Party, telling them that you have to be aware. Justices, he says, and I quote, "The justices tend to believe that the differences among judges mostly reflect not politics, but judicial jurisprudence." That's not what the public thinks. He goes on to talk about how the public now expects presidents to accept decisions of the court, including those that are politically controversial. The court has become able to impose a significant check, a legal check, upon the executive's actions in cases where the executive strongly believes it's right, and that people should think long and hard before embodying the changes in the law, such as changes to increase the number of people in the court, because court packing is dangerous. Because a court that is based on the idea of just politics, of political preferences, that's not good. That's why the American people opposed it in October. It's why the American public opposed it under FDR. Because we don't want judges who are politicians. We want judges who are judges. And if we get judges who are politicians instead, if we pack courts just so that one party can have control instead of another party, well, that violates a basic block of the American public. It destroys our trust in the system. And you have to understand, we have a reason to be questioning this. If you may recall, when Joe Biden on April 8th decided to speak to the American people about his executive orders that he planned to put forward about gun control, he said, and this is important, and I quote, "From the very beginning, you couldn't own any weapon you wanted to own. From the very beginning, the Second Amendment existed. Certain people weren't allowed to have weapons. So the idea is just bizarre to suggest that some of the things we're recommending are contrary to the Constitution." That is a lie. That is a blatant lie, and it has been called out by many in the news media because it's not true. You can own machine guns. In fact, 131,000 Americans currently do own machine guns. In fact, they own over 700,000 machine guns right now. That's a fact. Then you can look it up from the ATF, as we discussed again at Rutgers University when I was speaking there. That is a fact. You can own a bazooka, you can own a tank, and Americans do own them. And they aren't problems. And we know that machine guns have existed since the 1500s. That is a fact. Or multi-barrel repeating firearms. They've existed for centuries. So he's not being honest. But imagine that we have a Supreme Court that is filled with judicial activists, individuals who are creating law from the courts, who have a political agenda in mind, who also agree with this revisioning of the Second Amendment, of this change to the Second Amendment that no one has had a chance to vote on, that the American people haven't been asked about, that hasn't gone through our representatives who are obligated to vote and believe what we, the people, believe, because we hold the power of government. It creates an elitist structure where you are no longer important. Your vote is no longer important. It's the political party in power. They're the only ones that matter. It's a dangerous, dangerous cycle. And we know that the Democratic Party and groups within the Democratic Party, especially the most progressive and far left of those individuals, are actively pushing to get the results they want. Most recently, we've been seeing, as reported by Politico, we can see that individuals from, here it is, Cliff Albright, a co-founder of Black Votes Matter, and Rachel O'Leary Carmona, an executive director of Women's March, have been making their positions very clear about how they want things to go forward. What they're looking for is, what they want to do is to cement the career of Justice Breyer, who they want to see retire. They want him to cement his career as a champion for women, to step down and to make sure that so much of the progress that he helped women achieve through court victories isn't lost. That's a political statement. That's a political stance. They want him to be political, not a Supreme Court justice. It gets a little more clear if we look at what else is going on. Let's look at the further quote. We don't want to end up with the same situation that we ended up with Justice Ginsburg. If you're somebody who cares about voting rights, you've got to care about the future of the Supreme Court. That is the most immediate potential vacancy affecting that future. If you're somebody who cares about voting rights, the Supreme Court justices aren't supposed to be worried about the current questions of whether voting rights are good or bad in terms of the voting rights laws, the law in Georgia or in Colorado, which is even more severe than those in Georgia. No. They're supposed to handle the cases that come before them and judge them based on the Constitution when they arrive. Not that they're supposed to be elected with these ideas already in mind. Look at what was said by Rachel Carmona. Mitch McConnell will do everything and anything that he can to stop a justice who supports women's rights from being confirmed. Well, isn't a Supreme Court justice supposed to be worried about American rights, which would be male and female and transgendered and whatever else you wish to put in there? Aren't they supposed to be looking at the Constitution, the amendments? Aren't they supposed to be worried about all of our rights, not specific political groups that are advantageous to certain political parties? They're looking to have judicial advocates, not Supreme Court justices. It gets even worse when we look at this. Most recently, in an article that came out on the 14th of April from Politico, Democrats to introduce legislation to expand the Supreme Court. Last night at 9:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Justice Stephen Breyer, who outside groups are urging to retire before the 2022 midterms, recently cautioned against court packing for fear that doing so would only undermine public confidence in the institution. They want him gone before they lose power, before they lose the ability to shove more people to pack these courts, to take away the independence of the Supreme Court and to turn it into a political circus. This isn't about trying to maintain. This is about trying to gain control, to take away the balance of our judicial system. And they're being very blatant about it because they want to. The reports are coming out. They're looking to add 4 more Supreme Court justices. Why 4 Supreme Court justices? Under the Biden-Harris administration? Because that would give them a 7-6 majority. They would have control of the Supreme Court. And they want to do that at the same time that they have control of the House of Representatives and the Senate and the presidency. They want a full deck. They want to be able to have the ability to override any objection that may come from conservatives, from libertarians, from Republicans, and any other voice, even moderate Democrats. And if they have control of all of the houses of government, then they can. And we know that one of their first targets is the Second Amendment, that they want to take away a person's rights. Just look at H.R. 127 as we've discussed it before. It wants to make it financially impossible for the poor, for women, and for people of color to be able to have the ability to execute the Second Amendment. We know by the red flags, they want to strip away the ability of due process for American citizens to be able to punish people without any recourse, without any crime ever being committed. This is a scary time in America, and we should be terrified. And this is a plan. Joe Biden didn't want to answer the question in October of 2020 because it wasn't the right time. And he's doing things in time, when things are just right, when the timing on the plan is correct, in the order that the plan exists. This should trouble every single American and also our allies across the world. What is the plan for the rest of the world? We just saw that the Biden administration has given a specific, absolute date to change the political landscape and the physical landscape of the Middle East. We know that they have moved in more and more troops into Syria, as they have given an exact date when they will get out of Afghanistan, changing the entire outlook and the future of the Middle East, which also affects Russia, China, and Iran. We know that we are currently in discussions with Iran to get a nuclear deal, to re-engage the Iran nuclear deal, and to free up money for Iran, the global leader of terror in the world. And the last time we did this, according to then Secretary John Kerry, this enabled them to create more global terror than they had the ability to do beforehand. Yes, de facto, the American government, under the Iran nuclear deal, funded global terror. And the Biden administration wants to do it again. This affects everyone in the world. What about our relations with Britain and France, Germany? Well, how are we going to be interacting with North Korea? Other hot spots throughout the world. They're seeing this. They see that there is a plan. And this plan takes away the power of the American people that is so critical to the freedom of Americans, and is placing it in the hands of a few elite far left individuals. Some of them are scared by that. The American people should be scared by that. We think this is something that's very important. You weren't told the answer in October of 2020 because they didn't want you to take away their potential power. Now that they have the power, they're rushing this through before you have the opportunity to think about it, while you're still on the sugar high from all the free stuff they've given you, before you start evaluating all of the changes that they've made so far, before you can see the consequences of their actions. But this is one step too far, and we should speak out, and we should denounce this, like Justice Breyer has said, just like Justice Ginsburg had said prior to her death. Just like Americans and the American system has said since FDR. This is bad for America. This is turning our entire elected system, our governance of our nation, into a political circus. It makes us one step closer to an authoritarian government rather than a land of the free. Now, you may disagree with us. You may see all of the information that we are presenting to you and the links that we'll have in the description of this video so that you can see it for yourself. And you may say, well, you're misunderstanding. No, this is a good thing. That this is a plan being executed and it is timed for maximum success. You may think that's a good thing, and we would like to hear why you think so. Please do leave us that comment. But we do believe this is a conversation that should happen in America, and that must happen in America before any action is taken, because this will affect generations upon generations to come. And we may never go back. In fact, we probably never will. We look forward to hearing what you have to say about this, and we look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have found this to be informative or interesting, please like and share it. And until the next time, we thank you